Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, what's up? My name is Ashley. Today I'm super excited because we're going to be reviewing the new Covergirl Outlast Extreme Wear 3-in-1 foundation. So if you want to see my first impression and also the wear test for this foundation, then definitely keep on watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It would help me out so much. And also don't forget to subscribe before you leave. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so this foundation claims to be very long wearing. It claims to wear for 24 hours. It claims to be full coverage. And let's see what else. It's a primer, concealer, foundation, all in one. So I guess that's where like the 3-in-1 name comes from. So you don't need a primer, and it's also supposed to be so full coverage that you don't need a concealer as well. That's interesting. It's supposed to offer a naturally flawless finish, 24-hour wear, sweat-proof, humidity-proof, cover your imperfections, even out skin tone, but also feel light and comfortable and breathable on the skin. So that sounds really, really great, and I'm super intrigued. I have the shade 802 Golden Ivory. I believe this is the second dark, not the lightest, but the second to lightest shade. I haven't even opened it yet, but here's what the packaging looks like. It comes in a glass bottle, and it has this really pretty vibrant pinky red cap, and this is just the standard 1 fluid ounce of product. I'll go ahead and put some swatches in too of this foundation shade compared to some of my other foundation shades. I have a more fair sometimes to light skin tone with golden warm undertones, and also, just so you know, my skin is very dry and dehydrated. Alright guys, here are some swatches. This is the Covergirl Outlast Extreme Wear 3-in-1 foundation in Golden Ivory. Here is the Urban Decay Hydromaniac Tinted Hydrator in the shade 20. Here is the e.l.f. Camo CC Cream in the shade Fair 120N. And here is the Maybelline Fit Me Dewy and Smooth in the shade 110 Porcelain. And just beware that these are wet swatches, so some of them might change when they dry. Covergirl does oxidize, so it gets a bit darker and a little bit more pinky, peachy, salmony colored. Ooh, here's what it looks like. It's a bit more runny than I was expecting, actually. For some reason, when I heard like full coverage 24-hour wear, I was expecting it to be very thick, but it seems actually pretty liquidy. Alright, so I've already applied my moisturizer and sunscreen, and I'll do half of my face with a brush and half of my face with a sponge. So let's go in with one pump first. I'll just take half of that pump I did, and I'm going to blend that out with my e.l.f. Total Face Sponge. The color might be a little light for me, but I think we can make it work. It kind of smells like paint a little bit. It almost reminds me of the original Wet n Wild Photo Focus foundation, like that smell. Okay, so here's what it looks like applied to half my face with a sponge. I think it gave pretty good coverage. I would say it's probably a good medium coverage. I can still see a little bit of my redness peeking through and some of my dark spots. But it doesn't look super matte right now. I don't know if it's gonna dry down, but with the sponge it looks like a nice satin finish. I would say not too dewy, but also not like super matte on on initial application, and yeah, just like a good medium coverage. So let's go ahead and try a brush on the other side. I'm just gonna take the remaining half of that pump. Okay, so just with that half of pump, I can already tell that with the brush, it definitely looks less dewy. It's like this side looks a little bit more hydrated to me, but it's definitely not like a flat matte. I think it still has that nice skin-like finish. And again, with the half a pump, I think you can get light medium coverage. So let's see if we can build it up. Take another pump here. And let's go ahead and do the sponge side first. It blends out really easily. Like, it's a really good consistency to where it's not too thick that it makes it difficult to blend, but it's also not too thin to where like I feel like my sponge is soaking up all the product. Definitely getting more coverage with the second layer. So it does build, and because it does claim to be a concealer as well, I'm going to bring it up under my eyes. Yeah, I think that built up really nicely. Definitely think it's good full coverage. I don't think it's like opaque full coverage, but low, full, high, medium coverage. I mean, it's pretty full coverage. Like, maybe if you have very, very, very stubborn red acne, you'd have to go in with a little bit more, but it really evens out everything nicely. It provides a really nice canvas. So let's go ahead and use the brush on the other side. Yeah, I think for me personally, I prefer the sponge just because I have more dry skin, so the sponge just adds a little bit more hydration that my skin needs, and also it just looks a little bit more dewy with the sponge. But if you have normal to oily skin, I think either application method is fine. I feel like you get pretty much the same amount of coverage with both, actually. I just feel like with the sponge, it's a little bit more of a satin finish. It's still satin with the brush, but just a little bit, at least for me, harder to blend and just a little bit more matte. But it's emphasizing my dry patches on my forehead a little bit more with this brush side, just because brushes are a little bit more abrasive naturally and they can tend to kind of pick up any dry skin. So if you have dry patches, I'd probably recommend either going in very, very gently with a brush or using a sponge. I'm going to try to build up a little bit more on my nose just because that's where I have the most redness. And I'm also going to put some under my eyes because it claims to be a concealer as well. It's pretty liquidy for a concealer sort of product, so I'm going to let it sit for like 30 seconds before I blend it out. All right, I'm going to take my sponge on this side. Okay, on this side I'm just going to use a brush. Okay, so it looks pretty good as a concealer. I think it gives maybe like a medium coverage as a concealer, so it's not super, super full coverage. You can see a little bit of my darkness peeking through. And I also feel like it's kind of the same with the sponge. I feel like it just looks a little bit smoother, whereas with the brush, it can look a little bit drier. So if you have, like I said, very dry skin or dry patches, I would probably avoid using a brush with this foundation and just go for the sponge. But with the sponge, it looks really, really great for a full coverage satin finish foundation. And I think if you wanted, you could definitely use this as a more medium coverage concealer. But I'm just gonna go over everything with the sponge just because my skin is dry and I feel like it'll just help everything mesh together and give this foundation the best chance possible. Also, it feels slightly tacky, but not very sticky at all. All right, so I'll zoom in a little bit and give you a close-up of how everything is looking. Alright guys, so I've let this set down for about 10 minutes and I have a few observations. The first is that it does set down, it's not tacky, it pretty much dries completely. The second is that it does oxidize a bit. So I put some on the back of my hand that's pretty much dry now. And as you can see, when you first pump it out, it is a lot lighter. So here's the dried bit. I don't know if you can tell. And here is when I just pumped it out. There's the dried bit and there's the fresh foundation. So it gets a little bit darker and it also does this weird thing to where it turns like slightly more pink, like more salmony colored. Like this one looks a little bit more warm to me, whereas when it dries, it gets like more of an orangey pink sort of undertone. It's weird. So I'm not the biggest fan of the color on my skin. And I also feel like now that it's dried, it does look a little bit heavy on my forehead where I have a lot of dry skin. So if you have dry skin like me, beware of that. You might have to go in with like a super hydrating primer, which this claims to be a primer. and a foundation and a concealer. So I don't know if that's true if you have dry skin. I think you're going to need to take some extra preparation steps. That said, I did have a moisturizer and a pretty moisturizing SPF on, and I still feel like my skin looks pretty dry up here. So just something to be aware of. We'll see if it gets better throughout the day, but as of right now, I'm not loving the color and I'm not loving how heavy and cakey it looks on my forehead. I'll get a little bit closer so you can see, but I'm going to call the check-in time 1:11. It's 1:11 p.m. so I'm going to wear this for as long as possible and we'll see how it looks. Yeah, here's my forehead. Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly do the rest of my makeup and then I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I just finished up the rest of my makeup and it's about 1:30 now, so I'm going to wear this for as long as possible and I'll give you a close-up in natural light too so you can see what everything's looking like. And yeah, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay guys, so here's my first check-in. This is right after I finished filming, and I also wanted to add that I didn't powder my face or add any like setting spray or anything, so this is just like my natural, just the foundation to see how it really wears. And I have even another observation that I forgot to add before, is that I feel like this foundation applied around my eyes is actually irritating my eyes, and the smell sort of like lingers. So if you are very sensitive to foundation scents, that's just something to keep in mind. I feel like the smell is very strong and it does linger, and I don't know if I would apply it around my eyes again, especially if you have sensitive eyes. I don't think you should. But yeah, I think it's still looking a little bit heavy on my forehead. I think you can tell better in this light. It's sort of sank into my forehead lines already. It's already sinking into my smile lines. Yeah, that's just how everything's looking. Okay guys, I'm back. It is currently, I don't know if you can see that, 5:43 p.m. There you go. So I've been wearing this foundation for about like 4.5 hours. I know it's not like the longest wear test ever, but it's been like torture keeping this on. I'm not even being dramatic. Like after like an hour of wearing it, I just really wanted to take it off my face. And there are some pros to this foundation. I would say the pros are, I really like the packaging. I think the twist pump that locks is really nice. I like the price. I like that it's super affordable. And I do feel like if you have more normal to oily skin, you might really enjoy this. I think it could possibly be very long wearing for you, and it does give really great coverage. So those I feel like are the pros. It's good packaging, it's affordable. I think it would work for I think it could work for normal to oily skin, and I really like the amount of coverage that it gives. I also do feel like it is somewhat lightweight on the skin. It's not super heavy. So those are the pros. The cons are that it looks so cakey on my dry skin, and I feel like as the day went on, the cakier it looked. So that's why like after 4 hours I was like, okay, I already know how I feel. It can't get any better than this because I don't get oily. So right now it's looking very thick. I don't know if you can tell. It's looking really heavy here on my forehead. And it also is looking super thick around my mouth. Just really heavy around my nose. And also I feel like as a concealer it's terrible because it creased a lot. It looks super creepy, and I feel like it's lost coverage, or either that or my eyes. I've just gotten more tired and my dark circles have gotten worse, but you can totally see them peeking through. So this is not a very good high coverage concealer. I think it isn't flattering under the eyes, and I think it just bunches up in weird ways on my skin. So also I don't like the smell. That gave me a headache because it lingered for a while after I applied it. It's not here anymore, but it was detectable for a while. And also I don't like how it oxidized. I think not only did it get darker, but it also like changed the undertone, the color changed. So mine was initially a little bit too light, but had the right undertone. It was warm. And then when it oxidized, it got a little bit darker, which I was fine with, but then it kind of turned like pinky, salmony undertone color. So I didn't like that. So those are definitely the cons. I don't like that it oxidizes. I don't like the smell. And I think if you have dry skin, run away, or you really need to prep your skin with like an oil or a very, 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 very hydrating primer. Now, it wasn't the hottest day here, so maybe if it was really hot and I was sweating, I would reach for this, just because I feel like it is, for a matte foundation, it doesn't look terrible. I think I wouldn't wear this on an everyday basis, but if it was very, very hot and I really wanted my makeup to last, maybe I would reach for this. But I just feel like there are better options. Like, I really love the e.l.f. Camo CC Cream. I feel like that one gives amazing coverage just like this. I feel like it's pretty long wearing, but I just feel like it doesn't look as heavy on my skin. I think if you have normal to combo to oily skin, you would really enjoy this. I just think that if you have dry skin like me or dehydrated skin, you're probably not gonna like this, because it does kind of cling to those dry spots and look a little bit heavy. I don't think the claim of it being like a 3-in-1 product is true. I think you would need a primer. I think, especially if you have drier skin, you definitely need a hydrating primer. And also, I don't think it's, I mean, I think it can be a concealer in the sense that it would conceal blemishes around your face because it's pretty high coverage, but under the eyes, it doesn't work, at least not for me. So yeah, I hope you guys found this review helpful, and let me know if you've tried out this foundation. I would love to know what you think of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye.